You know, there are artists who play an instrument. And then there are artists who completely reinvent it. They tear it down to its studs and rebuild it into something no one had ever imagined. Today, we're talking about one of those artists, the one and only Jimi Hendrix.
So I want you to picture this. It's the last morning of the Woodstock Festival. The sun is just starting to cut through the morning haze. The fields are, well, they're a sea of mud and 500,000 exhausted people. And then a single guy walks out onto the stage to close out the whole thing.
And what he does next becomes one of the defining moments of an entire generation. But what was really going on there? What did it all mean? And how did that moment even happen? That's what we're going to deconstruct, to really get to the heart of the man who made it.
All right, so to really get Hendrix, we have to start right there, at Woodstock. But here's the thing. The story you think you know, yeah, that's probably not the whole story. The reality of it is actually way messier, and frankly, a lot more interesting than the legend.
First off, this popular image of Hendrix playing to 500,000 people at the festival's peak? Nope, that's not what happened. He was the closing act on a Monday morning playing to the diehards who were left. His band, a brand new lineup that was totally under-rehearsed. And that supposedly spontaneous, shocking performance of the anthem, he'd already played it in public nearly 30 times before that day. And yet, somehow, none of that mattered. Because in that moment, with all that feedback and distortion, Hendrix was painting a picture of a nation at war with itself. Those weren't just random noises. He was making his guitar sound like rockets and bombs and screams. And really, who better to channel those sounds than a former paratrooper from the 101st Airborne? He was translating the chaos of the Vietnam War into a language everybody, and I mean everybody, could understand. And that's the real magic, isn't it? The fact that this performance, which by all rights should have been a complete disaster, became so powerful. It's incredible. So it makes you wonder, how did he even get to that stage in the first place? Well, his journey there was anything but ordinary. Hendrix's path to becoming the highest paid rock star on the planet was, well, it was a rocket ship. It was unbelievably fast and wildly improbable, a total whirlwind of near misses and just explosive, undeniable talent. Just think about how quickly this all went down. In just a handful of years, he goes from being a paratrooper that his superiors literally wanted to get rid of to playing backup for R&B legends. Then, boom, 1966, he gets discovered, gets whisked off to London, and forms one of the greatest power trios in history. And by 67, he comes back to America and literally sets the music world on fire at the Monterey Pop Festival. I mean, when a member of the Rolling Stones introduces you like that, you know a major shift is happening. But Hendrix's impact wasn't just about the showmanship, setting guitars ablaze. At its very core, it was a fundamental reinvention of the instrument itself. Okay, so let's get into the real genius here. Because Jimi Hendrix didn't just play the electric guitar, he completely rewired its DNA. Before Hendrix came along, the guitar had a pretty defined job, right? And things like feedback and distortion, that was a mistake, an accident. It was the stuff your sound guy would be desperately trying to get rid of. But Hendrix, he heard those mistakes and saw a brand new language. He took that unwanted noise and turned it into intentional, emotional color, transforming the guitar from an instrument into a sonic paintbrush. So how'd he do it? It was pure alchemy. He'd take that ear-splitting screech of feedback that engineers hated and conduct it like a symphony. He took the whammy bar, which was meant for just a gentle little wobble, and turned it into a weapon for these screaming dive bombs. And he was one of the first to master new toys like the wah-wah pedal, making his guitar sound like it was talking or crying or even singing. His innovation wasn't just sonic, it was harmonic too. I mean, the guy has a chord named after him, the Hendrix chord. It's this beautiful, tense sound that's kind of happy and kind of sad, major and minor, all at the same time. That sound you hear in Purple Haze, that collision of blues and funk and rock right there in his hands, that is the sound of the revolution he started. So what is the legacy of that revolution? Well, it's an echo that has just resonated for decades, way, way beyond rock and roll. But it's also a legacy that got really complicated really fast, almost immediately after his death. Just look at this. The sheer breadth of his influence is absolutely staggering.
You've got the legendary jazz giant Miles Davis telling his own guitar players to play some Hendrix. You've got funk gods like Prince, grunge pioneers like Kurt Cobain, and even foundational hip-hop groups like De La Soul. Everybody, it seems, drew something from his well of sonic innovation. When Hendrix died in 1970, he left behind a vault packed with unfinished music. A producer named Alan Douglas was given the rights to assemble and release it, but the way he went about it sparked a massive controversy that still gets debated today. So on one hand, you have the argument that Douglas was just doing what Hendrix would have wanted, polishing up some unfinished ideas, getting rid of the subpar takes to protect his legacy. Some people, even his original drummer, Mitch Mitchell, seem to agree with this approach at times. But then there's the other side, summed up by this pretty damning quote from Hendrix's original producer, Chas Chandler. See, Douglas didn't just edit things. On some tracks, he completely wiped the original bass and drums and had session musicians record brand new parts. For many, that wasn't curation, that was revisionism. And it raises this huge question. When an artist is gone, who gets to decide when their work is truly finished? When you peel back all those layers, the myths, the controversy, the legend, you're left with an artist of just staggering creativity who had a tragically short window of time to share it with the world. Just let this sink in for a second. 4 years. That's it. That's all he had in the mainstream spotlight, from his first big album in 1967 to his death in 1970. In that tiny sliver of time, he released 3 of the most important albums ever made and completely changed the direction of modern music. 4 years. One revolution. And behind that fiery, psychedelic persona was a man who is often described as being shy, quiet, and deeply sensitive. This quote from his own writings really gives you a glimpse into that more poetic, introspective side of him. And that brings us all the way back to our big question. How can a story so short leave an echo so long? Well, maybe the answer is that in just 4 years, he didn't just write songs. He created a new sonic vocabulary, a whole new language that musicians even today are still learning how to speak. He painted with sound, and those colors, they're still as vibrant as ever.